Hello everyone, and welcome to a year in review with Markforged and Formlabs 3D printers. My name is Brice Babinec, and I am joined here today by Joseph Haines, and the two of us work on the technical side for 3D printing here at MLC CAD Systems. We appreciate you guys taking the time to join us today as we review some of the most fun and exciting 3D printer updates from this year, specifically with Markforged and Formlabs. Today we're going to take a look at the latest advancements in hardware, software, and materials. We'll showcase how these materials are driving the additive manufacturing industry forward. As you can see, we have a decent amount of things to cover on this list, so we're going to try to keep it interesting and just get you up to speed on the basics for each one of these updates. But if there's something here that you're interested in and you'd like to know more about it, we do have a ton of in-depth content that we can share with you, and we'll also stick around for questions here at the end. But for now, let's go ahead and get started with the most exciting updates from the year, the newest machines and the hardware updates. We'll kick it off with one of my favorite updates for the year, which was the introduction of metal printing on the Markforged FX10. The FX10 was announced in late 2023, so technically it shouldn't be here, but I'll go over it just to provide some context for this latest update. When this thing came out, it was a beast of a machine already, and Markforged called it the most versatile tool for the factory floor. I actually think that's pretty fitting for our topic here today. To start, it had a massive build volume of 15 by 12 by 12 inches, and it's 2 to 4 times faster than its predecessors. At launch, it could print onyx filament, which is a nylon with chopped carbon fiber, but it could also use Markforged's patented technique of embedding continuous strands of carbon fiber into your part, and you get a part that's as strong as aluminum. They also added a handful of other upgrades over their previous machines, like the Vision module, for example, which is a built-in camera that's tied to software, and that all monitors your print, scans it for defects, and uses what it sees to improve your printer's performance. Also, because it prints twice as fast, that means it burns through twice the amount of material as before, so they've added 4 material spool bays, and now the printer can automatically switch between those bays and allow you to print continuously. So this printer was already extremely capable with its size, speed, and ability to make strong parts, but they saved the best thing for last. One of the updates that they emphasized at the end of the year was the FX10's future-proof design and its modular architecture to allow for easy upgrades. And at the time, most of us, I think myself included, saw that as just a long-term promise. They can upgrade this thing and make it faster and more robust. But they already had probably one of the best updates later in 2024, and they took a huge leap forward by introducing the metal printing kit to the FX10. And it's an upgrade that transformed it into the first industrial 3D printer that can print with both advanced composites and metals. We've had metal printers from Markforged and we've had composite printers. Now they've taken everything they've learned and built it into one machine that uses the same software. So it has this unmatched versatility. The printing kit takes advantage of the FX10's modular design, so it takes just 15 minutes to switch over to metal, and that kit includes a metal-specific print head, dual pre-extruders, and separate material routing system. And it uses the same process as the previous Markforged Metal X, where we have a ceramic release interface with our supports, so we can still print incredibly complex geometries with this thing. And so in 2023, we had a giant printer that was extremely fast, and it could make parts with the strength of aluminum. Now we can use that same machine for even the most demanding applications by printing now with stainless steel, tool steel, copper, and Inconel. And that's why this is my personal favorite update of 2024.
Like Markforged, Formlabs also had a great year for new innovations. Their most significant one was the complete revamp of their resin printing engine. The old Form 3 series printers used a mirror-guided laser-based printing system that has been at the core of Formlabs resin printers since the Form 1 about 10 years ago. You'd think that after 3 iterations and all those successful years, that Formlabs would be too invested in that style of tech to shift gears, but you'd be wrong. Formlabs surprised us all when they launched the Form 4 series printers this year. Form 4's print engine is now an LED array. It's collimated to produce uniform light that shines through an LCD screen. The LCD is capable of selectively masking the light to only allow light to illuminate the cross-section being printed for that layer. What this means is faster print speeds, stronger green state parts, greater accuracy, and a simpler, easier to maintain setup than what we saw before. Plus, it's scalable, which was demonstrated by the release of the large format Form 4L about a month ago. Lessons learned from previous models were incorporated into both printers to massively improve quality of life and print success. These improvements include a fast, mechanically driven mixer that doesn't decouple, direct resin heating for a faster preprint routine, more reliable consumable detection, faster resin dispensing thanks to a redesigned resin cartridge, and a more durable resin tank that won't suffer from material-dependent expirations. Plus, you get a camera so you can monitor jobs while you're away and create some cool time-lapse videos to boot.
All right, well, it's pretty hard to top the Form 4s. Formlabs has obviously been really busy this year, but it actually hasn't just been with SLA resin printers. They've also been improving and adding capabilities to their high-volume production machine, the Fuse, and more specifically, the post-processing machines for the Fuse. If you're not familiar with SLS 3D printing, I would encourage you to check out some of our other content explaining it, because it is definitely one of the most capable machines out there. It's making tons and tons of parts. We're talking hundreds of parts. It's doing it in less than a day in most cases, and you don't have to worry about any supports, and it has one of the best surface finishes out there of any 3D printing approach. And that surface finish got even better this year with the release of polishing for the Formlabs blasting cabinet. Sandblasting isn't 100% necessary for SLS, but it is highly recommended to speed up your post-processing. And fortunately, Formlabs offers a fully automated solution that they call the Blast. And it's another piece of hardware that came out last year, but received a major update in 2024. It originally just ran off of standard blasting media, which uses an abrasive process that cleans up the surface of your parts and removes any excess powder. The Blast has an automated tumbler, so it evenly distributes the media across the parts as they're being sprayed, and it really helps to get into every nook and cranny, which provides a huge time savings. This year, though, Formlabs released a polishing add-on kit, and unlike the abrasive blasting media, polishing works by compacting the surface of a part and smoothing it to an almost gloss finish. Switching over to the polish is a quick and painless process that takes about 15 minutes. You start by installing the polishing module, switching the blast nozzle out, replacing the media with polishing powder, and then you just fill up the water tank, mix a small amount of polishing agent in, and you're ready to start producing parts that almost look injection molded. The polish has really opened SLS up to a lot more applications as an end-use product, because it's very difficult to tell that these things are 3D printed. And the Blast isn't the only piece of SLS equipment that got an update this year, because the Sift got one as well. For anyone who's unfamiliar, the Sift is where you separate your parts from unfused plastic powder in SLS, and the Sift recaptures that powder so you can actually recycle it for future prints, and it brings the cost of the process way down. It's always been a pretty safe process with the Sift because it has this huge filter at the back that pulls a negative pressure in the chamber. So you almost have to try to get any powder to fall out of it. But Formlabs recognized that some companies have a much higher safety requirement, so they introduced the optional glove box attachment this year to fully enclose the sifting chamber. It's a relatively minor update, especially compared to some of the other things we're talking about today, but I'm looking forward to it because it should make SLS even more accessible as a low-volume production machine.
Another small addition to the Formlabs product lineup, this time on the SLA side, is the new resin pumping system. It was released ahead of the Form 4 series printers in preparation for the increased resin consumption associated with the now faster print speeds and larger build volumes. That being said, there's also a version that works with the Form 3 series printers. It's ideal for use with the Form Auto or Form 3L. The system includes a resin pump that fits into the resin cartridge slot on the printer and a hose compatible with the newly released 5-liter resin jugs. From there, it's just a matter of registering the resin quantity using the included card, kind of like the Fuse's powder credit cards that come with new jugs of powder.
All right, so that covers our new machines and our hardware updates for the year. Let's move on now to the latest software improvements, starting with Markforged Performance Advisor. I think one of the best things about Markforged has always been their focus on efficiency, because their machines make some of the strongest 3D prints in the world, but those parts aren't locked behind some overly complicated software. The goal was always for their printers to be more of a tool and not something that you have to sit around tinkering with and spending hours dialing in settings. Performance Advisor is really the next evolution of that goal, because it's an automated and simplified simulation-based software that gives you significantly stronger parts with the click of a button. It automatically analyzes your part design, and it recommends optimized print settings that balance strength improvements with minimal increase in cost and print time. Here's a quick look at it in action just before we talk about how it works. So you upload your file, it runs in the background, and it recommends these print settings. So you can apply those settings with the click of a button and go ahead and print your part and sit back and let the printer do its thing. So this part specifically was 110% stronger than it was before, with a couple of hours of extra print time and only about $10 extra in cost. The process uses two main steps. Step one is an automated analysis, which uses a physics-based method that examines the natural vibration shape, or the eigenmodes, of your part, and it uses that to identify areas that are most susceptible to stress and deformation. Step number two uses smart optimization, which is machine learning that evaluates your print settings based on three critical factors: strength, material cost, and print time. It takes all of those and it will recommend the optimal configuration for your part. And then with one click, you can decide if that improvement is worth it, or you can stick with the default settings. So Performance Advisor is really good at adding that extra bit of strength for your everyday parts. But if you've been paying attention to Markforged releases over the past few years, you may have seen their full simulation software release last year. And so I do want to make a distinction between the two. Simulation is incredibly useful to optimize parts for a specific load case scenario, but for simulation, you want to know what that load is, and you have to input it into the software in the direction of that load. Performance Advisor, on the other hand, is use case independent. It's really designed for quick and effortless optimization, and it can make parts stronger even when the real-world application is unknown. Performance Advisor is also available at no cost to any Markforged printer owner. So if you already have one of these printers and you want more information on using this software, let us know and we can kind of step you through the process for it.
Now, if you thought there were a lot of new things with Formlabs so far, just wait till you see what's new with Preform. For those of you that don't know, Preform is Formlabs' slicer, and Formlabs released some awesome updates this year for it. First, there were some small improvements made to the job setup pane that showcases more printer feedback information. This is particularly evident with the fuse setup, where you can view everything that goes into the print time, the print cost, along with printer status and consumables loaded. On another small note, Formlabs shifted the Send Print Job button to the bottom right corner for a more minimalistic look. Some of the more significant improvements include angle snapping at 15-degree increments and, for SLS, orientation lock, which is super useful for using the array or auto packing features. Packing the build volume full of 291 parts done in a recent video would have been a far more tedious process if not for the new orientation locker. That's one of the ways we were able to get that all printed in less than 24 hours. Check that video out if you haven't seen it. It's pretty awesome. The most significant improvement, though, to Preform are the CAD adjacent tools added to the left tool column. These include a shelling or hollowing tool to reduce resin consumption, since resin prints lack infill, unlike FDM prints. For a tool like this to exist, though, there must be a way to drain resin from the inside of prints and to avoid cupping. So naturally, Formlabs had to also add a hole tool. Both of these additions are great to exist in the slicer, since you may not have a reason to have these features in your feature tree in CAD. There's also the ability to apply labels to parts, which works for either curved or flat surfaces, and you can engrave or emboss the characters. Earlier this year, Formlabs created a texture engine called Meshy that is accessible through their website. While it still exists there, its popularity pushed Formlabs to add it to Preform for a more seamless workflow. There are pre-existing textures you can choose from, or you can upload a texture map for your own custom texture. This feature is awesome for SLA prints. Since these parts are so smooth, you can really capture fine texture details with resin and make your prints look like they have that embo grain like from an injection mold. The last tool to discuss is the new cage feature for fused prints. If selected, the fuse will print a protective cage around pre-selected parts to protect them from damage that could occur during sifting and blasting. Once both sifting and blasting are completed, the cage can then be simply broken away using pliers.
Next on the list is Markforged updates to their ROI calculator. Everything we've covered so far has really been about increasing your capabilities using 3D printing, and the ROI calculator, on the other hand, was created more to help you see the fruits of your labor and to help build a business case for the machine or future machines. Because investing in additive manufacturing equipment can be a pretty big decision, so being able to track and measure the return on that investment is essential for evaluating your success and also for justifying your future purchases. The tool is probably most useful if you already have a printer and a library of parts, but if you want to use it on the front end, we can help you with that as well and to help you out with building a business case. The calculator is especially useful if you're part of a large organization because we see it all the time where a company invests in a printer and the employees, they start using the printer all the time, and those direct users can see the benefits and the results. They can see the fixtures being made, the CNC machining time being saved, and different things being fixed with 3D printed parts. But all of that has to be communicated to management in monetary terms to justify the purchase or justify future printers, which is always a major setback point because who has the time to build out some intricate ROI report? As much as you might need that extra capability, that report is just not going to be a priority, and we get that. So that's where our Markforged ROI dashboard comes in, because with the new enhanced calculator, you can now track, evaluate, and justify your investments with a lot more precision and a lot more ease. At the very basic level, you can use the tool to compare costs to print parts versus using traditional manufacturing methods, but all of these calculations are based on estimations. So with the latest update, you can now customize your calculations with your own cost variables like material, labor, and energy, for example. You can also use this software to track specific parts instead of your whole inventory. So that's especially useful if you know there's one specific fixture or a production part that has saved a significant amount of time and money. You can isolate it to just that part. So these outputs can be really beneficial to help you visualize your usage and just to save you the time and effort of making your own one of these reports.
All right, in our third and final section, Brice and I are going to cover new materials. Starting with Formlabs, they released two new derivatives of their popular Nylon 12 for the Fuse 1 Plus. These are Nylon 12 Tough and Nylon 12 White. These two Nylon 12 powders were launched in response to competitor materials as well as customer requests. For example, Nylon 12 Tough is a superior formulation over Nylon 12 and now strongly competes against nylon powders provided by HP and EOS. Its ductility is more than double that of Nylon 12. It has better dimensional accuracy and improved repeatability. On top of all this, Nylon 12 Tough has a refresh rate of only 20%. That means you can print with 80% recycled powder, which is a huge cost savings and a considerable leading edge for Formlabs. Nylon 12 White is equally as impressive and really changes up the powder lineup from Formlabs, considering it is the only powder that isn't dark gray. This helps with post-print dyeing for color infusion and enhanced medical sterilizability. It prints with a 30% refresh rate, which is the same as base Nylon 12, and is recommended to print with nitrogen, which is a little bit different than Nylon 12, but it can also be printed in air just fine. Also, Formlabs shook up their adherence to nylon powders for their fuse system by releasing polypropylene this year. Polypropylene is one of the most commonly requested materials for SLS printing and is available from some of Formlabs' competitors. So Formlabs saw this weak link and decided it was time to catch up. One of the reasons why polypropylene is so requested is because it is the second most used plastic in the world after polyethylene, which I didn't know. It's pretty interesting. Since 3D printing is often used for prototyping, many people want to be able to prototype in the same material that they'll be using for mass production. Therefore, having a polypropylene compatible printing solution is hugely valuable across the board. Also, polypropylene is pretty inexpensive and is actually Formlabs' lowest cost SLS material. So there are quite a few attractive attributes of printing with it. In terms of material properties, polypropylene kind of hovers around nylon 11's material properties, each one alternating for the material with superior numbers as you go through the list of common properties like tensile strength or impact resistance. Now, with all that in mind, if you are debating on which material to choose, one attractor that might set polypropylene above nylon 11 is that you do not need nitrogen to print polypropylene, which just kind of contributes to the overall lower cost solution that is polypropylene.
Next up is the biggest material update from Markforged this year, which is a food-safe nylon. For a long time, the food and beverage industry has really been pretty out of reach for the 3D printing community because it requires strict adherence to different safety standards. And for years, the one critical barrier has been the lack of food contact certified materials. And that's until now. Because nylon white food safe is Markforged's first food contact certified 3D printing material, and it's designed specifically for factory floors within the food and beverage industry. It has various different certifications that unlock the ability to print parts for zones 1 and 2, which are the areas that come in direct contact with food or are in its immediate proximity. This non-abrasive nylon is really ideal for a wide range of applications, but some of the best ones are conveyor guides and pushers, chutes and funnels, end-of-arm tooling, brackets, shrouds, and all kinds of different mounts. So nylon white food safe really allows manufacturers to minimize lead times, reduce inventory costs, and resolve downtimes faster than before, and they can still meet their stringent food safe requirements. And it's being compatible with the FX10 that we talked about at the beginning of this webinar. It really allows it to have that speed and flexibility, and it brings customization into one of the most demanding environments as far as hygiene and safety. So this innovation is really going to expand what's possible for food and beverage manufacturers, and it'll hopefully enable a new era of on-demand, food-safe 3D printing.
Shifting gears over to SLA with Formlabs, with the new Form 4 series printers came new materials, namely upgrades to the general purpose family of resins. Since these are the most common resin materials in Formlabs' massive material library, it was only fitting that Formlabs made some improvements to their formulations, and boy did they. The new V5 resins boast superior material properties over their predecessors, better aesthetics, and enhanced printing. The V5 resins now more closely match the mechanical properties of Gray Pro, which is a great all-purpose legacy resin that captures fine details well, but also takes on more unforgiving functional applications with ease. The hues have been improved, along with increased optical clarity of Clear V5, so no more yellowing. And the V5 resins experience only a 5-minute cure at room temperature, rather than the much longer 30-minute cure plus 60-degree Celsius temp ramp up and cool down that was needed for the V4 resins. This last point is possible thanks not only to the improved chemical formulation, but also to the highest light intensity per unit area in the industry that the Form 4's low-force display print engine now boasts. Now, the new GP resins were launched in tandem with the Form 4, but there was another new resin released this year, ClearCast. As the name alludes, this material is for the pattern making step of the investment casting process. But you might be asking, wait a minute, didn't Formlabs already have a casting resin? And you'd be right. Formlabs engineered the castable wax family of resins, for which there are two members, castable wax and castable wax 40. However, these materials are for the jewelry making business, so you are limited to small parts. If you couldn't tell by now, Formlabs is not one to ostracize. So to account for the foundry industry, where 80% have actually used additive, they released a pattern-making resin designed for large patterns. 2 steps to note. 1, your parts will need to be shelled and filled with a lattice using a software like Materialize Magics or Formware prior to printing. 2, when you're ready for burnout, you'll need to flash fire. Autoclaving is not compatible with ClearCast, unlike the castable resins. Otherwise, Formlabs has used ClearCast resin to successfully cast titanium, bronze, aluminum, and stainless steel. Check out their site for more information. Well, that wraps it up for 2024. Since there was so much information to cover here, Brice and I kept it brief, just keep things light and not take too much of your time. So feel free now to ask any of your more detailed questions, or of course, you can always reach out to us at any time in the future. And if we don't talk to you before end of year, of course, we wish everyone happy holidays.